Samuel looked at Lucy the same way he had seen men look at women on TV. "Lucy, please," he said softly. "Let's do that thing again, the one the man and woman did in the video. I like it. It's so nice." Tears welled up in Lucy's eyes as she shook her head. "No, Brother Samuel, I won't do that again. It hurts so much. I never want to do it in my life again." Are you wondering how these children reach such a point? Why is Samuel asking Lucy to do something so unspeakable? How did it get here? And where are their parents in all of this? Stay with me as we uncover the heartbreaking story of Lucy and Samuel. 9-year-old Samuel and his 7-year-old sister Lucy were often left alone at home. Their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, were hard-working professionals. Samuel and Lucy had grown used to being by themselves, though it was far from something they enjoyed. They tried to entertain themselves with board games or drawings, but the TV always seemed to lure them in. One particular evening, Samuel was watching a late-night show featuring bright lights, loud music, and adults laughing and talking in a way that seemed odd to him. The scenes moved quickly, filled with excitement and intrigue. Curiously, he called out to Lucy, who was in the other room. "Lucy, come here." "Look at this." Samuel's voice echoed down the hallway. Intrigued, Lucy rushed into the living room and sat beside her brother. The two stared wide-eyed at the screen, mesmerized by the flashing colors and fast-paced music. They didn't understand much of what was being said, but it seemed fun, so they kept watching. "Why are they doing that?" Lucy asked innocently, her forehead creased in confusion. She didn't understand the content, but felt it was different from the shows they usually watched. "I don't know," Samuel replied. "Maybe it's something fun that grown-ups do?" The scenes continued, leaving their young minds confused yet curious. They didn't know it yet, but the images they were watching weren't meant for their eyes. They were unknowingly stepping into a world far more complex than their understanding. Days passed after Samuel and Lucy had watched that strange TV show, but the images remained fresh in their minds. The curiosity planted within them grew, soon becoming something they couldn't ignore. One afternoon, while their parents were at work, Samuel looked at Lucy, his face lit up with excitement. "Lucy, do you remember that thing we saw on TV?" he asked quietly, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Lucy's face tensed as the unsettling images crept back into her thoughts. "I don't know, Brother Samuel. It didn't feel right," Lucy replied, her voice hesitant. But Samuel had already made up his mind. "Let's try it," he said with a playful smile, unaware of the weight of his words. To him it seemed like just another harmless adventure. Lucy frowned, feeling uneasy. "No, Brother Samuel. Mom said we shouldn't copy things we see on TV," she said softly. But Samuel, oblivious to the implications, persisted. "Come on, Lucy, it's just pretend. No one will know." Lucy hesitated, unsure of what to do. Samuel added, "Remember when you went outside that day, even though Mom and Dad told us not to? No one found out. But if you don't do this with me, I'll tell Dad." Lucy panicked, not knowing what to do. Neither of them fully understood what they were about to do, but Samuel's words made her feel trapped. Finally, she agreed. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, Brother Samuel, let's do it." In that moment, the curiosity that had always driven Samuel and Lucy to explore together took a dark turn. Unlike the sweet adventures they usually shared, this time something was different. They entered the room and lay on the bed. Lucy felt a sharp pain. She screamed, running into the living room. "Ah, this is weird, Brother Samuel. I never want to do this again in my life," she cried, clutching her chest as tears streamed down her face. The pain was unbearable, far worse than she had anticipated. Samuel, on the other hand, didn't understand why Lucy was so upset and still wanted to continue, unaware of how terribly wrong the situation had become. But Lucy's heart raced with fear, and she deeply knew that this wasn't right. This wasn't like the harmless adventures they used to share. This time, there was no laughter, no joy, only pain and deep regret. Lucy's discomfort grew with each passing day. She could see the changes in Samuel's behavior, and it scared her. He had become more stubborn, more insistent, and Lucy could feel that he was no longer the playful brother she once knew. The innocence that had once defined their bond seemed to have slipped away. One afternoon, when their mother came home briefly to pick up some documents, Lucy felt an overwhelming need to speak up. She couldn't bear the silence any longer. "Mom, can I talk to you?" she asked hesitantly, her voice trembling as she approached her mother. Mrs. Johnson, distracted by phone calls and her growing to-do list, barely looked up. "Not now, Lucy. I'm in a hurry," she replied, juggling calls and glancing at her watch. Lucy stood there for a moment, her heart sinking. Her mother sighed, clearly stressed. "Later, darling. Be a good girl, all right?" She barely acknowledged her daughter's concern as she once again stepped out the door. Lucy's tiny voice faded into the background, drowned by the noise of her mother's busy life. She retreated to her room, tears streaming down her cheeks, her heart aching. She felt invisible in a home that was supposed to be a safe place. All she wanted was for her mother to hear her, to understand the weight of her pain. One afternoon, after yet another attempt by Samuel to ask Lucy to imitate an inappropriate scene from the show they had watched, Lucy couldn't take it anymore. She ran out of the house, her small body shaking with fear and confusion. She didn't know where to go. She found herself standing at the door of their kind neighbor, Aunt Grace. "What happened, Lucy?" Aunt Grace asked, kneeling down to meet her at eye level. Lucy couldn't hold it in any longer. She burst into uncontrollable tears, sobbing as she spilled everything: Samuel's request, the growing fear inside her, and the discomfort. Aunt Grace wrapped Lucy in a comforting hug. "You did the right thing by telling me," she said softly, her voice warm. "You don't have to carry this alone. I'm here for you, and we'll figure this out." The parents were shocked. At first, they were in defense mode. "Samuel wouldn't do something like that," Mr. Johnson said, his voice firm with disbelief. "Maybe they misunderstood what they saw." Mrs. Johnson tried to downplay the seriousness of the situation, but Aunt Grace was firm. "Children see what they see and are given enough material to make sense of it," she said. "You've been so focused on work that you've forgotten to see what your children are watching. This is a warning," she added, her voice steady and filled with concern. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were silent, realizing that their actions, although unintentional, had made their children vulnerable to dangers they hadn't even considered. They knew they had to change. From that day forward, the Johnsons made a conscious effort to ensure their children grew up in a safe and nurturing environment. They spent more time together, monitored their TV consumption, and encouraged open conversations. This story teaches us that the greatest gift we can give our children is our attention and love. Change begins by listening to their voice.